Recording. All right. Erev Tov, Shavua Tov to everybody. And an early Purim Sameach to you all. It's going to be, for some on here, will be on Wednesday night, Thursday. Others will be on Thursday night, Friday. Whenever your Purim is, it should be great. Tomorrow night, the man for whom I am named, which is my father's father, Allah Shalom, it's his yahrzeit. So tonight we'll learn in memory of Ze'ev ben Meir. Named for both of them, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. Neshama should have an aliyah. He passed away actually when my dad was 40. Well, he passed away when my dad was in his year before his bar mitzvah. So he died very young. Anyways, what I want to do tonight is a few things. I want to look at the very first pasuk of the parak, of parak Hey. Then we're going to look at the first couple psukim, first few psukim in Sefer Chagai. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who Chagai was, and then look at something specifically in the couple psukim in Chagai that is not a direct, it's an indirect connection, or direct connection to our parak, and then an indirect connection to something else. And then we'll see if we get anywhere else tonight. That's the general plan. So let's just take a quick look at the first pasuk of parak Hey, chapter 5, pasuk 1. V'itnabi Chagai neviya, uzchaya bar ido neviyaya, al Yehudaye, di vihud uvishalem, b'shum ela al Yisrael alehon. So it tells us that a man named Chagai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Ido, the prophet, but it's in plural. We'll maybe get to that. They gave prophecy about the Jews who lived in Yehuda and Yerushalayim in the name of Hashem, the God of Israel. Very nice. And then it starts telling about how, like we saw this last week, about the beginning of the discussion about who the non-Jews asking who gave you permission to build. So this is a pasuk that's very satum. It's very closed. It doesn't tell us anything. It just tells us that they gave prophecy. Shkoyach, very nice. So we can look in the commentaries and see a little bit about what it is. But let's do this instead. We're going to take a look, and I mentioned for some of you to, if you have a chance to look at Sefer Chagai, which is only 2 chapters. We're not going to read both. I'm going to read just a little bit of the first, and later come back to a little bit of the more into the first parak. And I was going to put up on the screen the first few psukim of Chagai. Okay. It says as follows, and it tells us that now also keep in mind that this Sefer is in Trei Asar. I mentioned also last week, Trei Asar, which means 12 in Aramaic. It's poorly translated into English as the minor prophets. They're not minor in any way, shape, or form. What they are called in the Gemara is Zutar. They're small, they're short. And the reason that they were, not all of them are that short though, but the Gemara tells us that the reason they're all combined into one book is because since they're short, and for example, Sefer Ovadia is literally one parak, they could be lost in the shuffle. So to give them more chashivut or importance, they're put together in one book. We have a question, the Gemara discusses why if Hosea is long, why it's in there. I'm not going to get into that. If you're interested, I can send you a link. So it tells us here as follows, in the beginning of Sefer Chagai, Bishnat Shtayim l'Daryavesh Amelech b'chodesh hashishi b'yom echad hachodesh. In the second year of the reign of King Daryavesh, on the first day of the 6th month, Hayad Dvar Hashem b'yad Chagai hanavi. So the word of Hashem came through the hand. It's important to note. It says b'yad Chagai hanavi. If you look in the English, it just says came through to the prophet. To Chagai hanavi, El Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel pachat Yehuda, and the prophecy was to be given to Zerubbabel son of ben Shaltiel, who was the Pecha. Pei Chet Hey, or the governor of Yehuda, Vel Yoshua ben Yotzadak HaKohen HaGadol Lemor, and it was also given to Yoshua ben Yotzadak, who was the Kohen HaGadol. Now we know those names already. What was it that he said? So has the Hashem said, these people have been saying, it's not yet time. It doesn't seem to be it's the right time to rebuild the house of Hashem. Then, Vahidvar Hashem b'yad Chagai hanavi lemor, and the word of Hashem came again. It says in the Yad Chagai, in the hand of Chagai, is saying, Ha'et lachem atem lashevet bevatechem sefunim. Is it really the right thing, a time for you to sit in your beautiful houses while the Beit HaMikdash lies in ruin. This should recall to you the similar idea when David HaMelech was pained by the fact that it said that he lived in the Beit HaRazim. He lived basically in a palace, and the Aron was in a tent. And he was moved to say, no, it's time to build Beit HaMikdash. We have to do this. And of course, Natan David says yes. Then Hashem tells him to tell him no. But it's a similar idea. Hashem is telling the Navi who tells Am Yisrael, or first these two individuals, something's wrong here. You guys are living in your nice little McMansions. Those of you not from the United States, you don't necessarily know the terminology, but McMansion is like a small mansions that have sprung up in way too many communities, the Jewish communities in the United States. And look, Nebuch, the Beit HaMikdash is laying in ruins. So the first thing Hashem says, you know what, you really should see, to quote Lahavdil, Dr. Phil, how's that working out for you? Let's take a little accounting, says God. Zeratem harbe v'avei me'at achol. You've planted a lot. V'avei me'at. You've planted a lot, but you haven't brought very much into your house. Achol ve'en l'sova. You've eaten, but you're not full. Shato ve'en l'shachra. There is not, you drink, but you don't get satiated from the drink. Lavosh, you get dressed. Ve'en l'chomlo, it doesn't warm you. V'hamistaker atzor nakuv. And what do you earn? You earn just literally means a leaky purse. Again, I'm not going to get it. This purpose tonight is not to learn Sefer Chagai, but just to see what he's telling us. So Hashem says this to tell Am Yisrael. He repeats this statement and says even more so about how's that working out for you. The fact that it's not working out for you, there is a remedy. What is the remedy? Go up on the hills, get wood, and build the house. And if you do it, I will look with favor upon you, and I, says Hashem, will be glorified. You've expected a lot. You've only gotten a little. And when you brought it home, I would blow on it. Again, this is the allegory of Hashem saying through the Navi, you can keep spinning your wheels all you want, but it's not getting you anywhere. Why? You keep running back to your homes while my house lies in ruins. So it also tells us, therefore, because of that, there's no rain and the earth isn't giving forth its produce. So first, before we go any further, it should be somewhat ring a bell in your head that in addition to the fact that it is giving Musar to those people that time, remember we've said this dozens and dozens of times since we started learning Navi many years ago, that the words of Navi'im are eternal. These very same words can be said today, depending on what community a person lives in, stays in, is visiting, the same words would apply. And by the way, we're going to see how that's going to really play out with Navi Chagai in a minute. So here we have an introduction to a couple of things. We see that Chagai is, and again, I mentioned it's only two whole chapters. The mention of Chagai as far as what his prophecy was in our parak, in Parak Hey, in Sefer Ezra, is one pasuk. It doesn't even tell us what he says. We're relying now on Sefer Chagai to tell us what the prophecy was. Theoretically, again, I'm not it says the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the ones who put together the Trei Asar. So, maybe there was a discussion at some point, instead of having just two prakim of Sefer Chagai, maybe it should be Parak Hey should include those two prakim in Sefer Ezra. I don't know if that discussion took place. It would have been a legitimate discussion, but that's not important for now. What we need to do is to take a look at who is this man Chagai? How is he different than other Nevi'im as well? So first of all, just as far as on the technical side, there were, out of the 12 of the Trei Asar, 10 of them, he's number 10. Let me see if this is, okay. I wanted to see if anyone was contact. I see a bunch of messages pop on my phone. I want to make sure it wasn't someone from the group. He was the book number 10 out of the 12. And as we see in here, he's making a statement, again, whatever he says is just Hashem has handed to him, so to speak, to tell him, is that your number one, your priorities are completely out of whack. But wait a minute, you should be saying in your head, weren't they told they can't build? They had to stop. There was a stop order. We'll see. But number one, your priorities are whack. You're not even trying to rebuild Beit HaMikdash. You're not making any effort. And not only are you not making an effort to build Beit HaMikdash, where are you putting all your kochot and your money? Into your own home. And not only that, maybe wake up and see. You're planting, you're not growing a lot of stuff. You're bringing food in the house, it's not enough for you. You're drinking, it's not enough. The rain is stopped. You might, maybe I'll remind you, there's the second paragraph of Shema, Vayayim Shemoah, where we talk about the rain and the lack of doing mitzvot has something to do also with the rain. So he has a message we're going to get into in a minute, but it's also important to know that the name, Chagai's name, is significant because it doesn't really, we don't really know exactly, when I say we, it means the people I looked up, where it comes from, but there's some who say it may actually be short for Chag Hashem, Chag of Hashem, because what is Chagai's purpose? What is his goal here? Is to encourage through God, to encourage Am Yisrael to rebuild Beit HaMikdash and to truly serve Hashem the proper way on Chagim and every other day of the year as well. Now, if you look back for 1 second, let's just take a look again. And you look back at this parak, you'll see it says here, Biyad Chagai Hanavi. He's referred to 5 times in this very short book as Chagai Hanavi, right? Now that's not unusual. We talk about Eliyahu Hanavi. But the fact that it keeps repeating and repeating, the Mefarshim are tell us that he has a special message, and he makes him something. There's something different about his not his nevuah, but who he is relative to people, which we're going to see in just a second. He doesn't have visions. I'm going to keep this on the screen for now. He doesn't have visions. He actually delivers a very, very clear message. You know, if you look at Yeshayahu, if you can understand a lot of the psukim, if you look at Yirmiyahu, you look at Yechezkel, very often whatever the nevuot are, very often they're couched in metaphorical terms, in very high language, in terms of what exactly is the Navi trying to tell the people. Here, this is very straight. He's getting very straight what's being doing, and he's called the Navi because the word Navi comes, we've talked about this before, from the word Niv, meaning mouth, because the Navi is Hashem's mouthpiece. Because Chagai's message, his nevuah, is also, I said, and pointed out, it says it twice, it's been put into his hand. You see here it says, Dvar Hashem biyad Chagai HaNavi. Why? Because what if I have something in my hand, if I have a piece of paper, right? I'm holding it like this. It's very easy for you to take it from me. If I describe a piece of paper and I tell you what I want to have, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what it is I'm trying to get you to look at, read, do. But if I have something in my hand, it's very accessible. His message of the concept of what was going wrong and what they needed to do was in fact very accessible. The people were able to understand what he wanted. The people were able to accept what he wanted. We're going to talk about that also. But there was a lot of ambiguity because prior to this, we also had seen that the young Jews were thrilled about the beginning. Before there was a shutdown on the work site, the young Jews were thrilled, they were excited, and the older Jews were very sad. Young Jews were excited because it's the first time they're seeing a Beit HaMikdash. It's a process of rebuilding. The older Jews were upset because they had seen the first Beit HaMikdash in its glory, and here they were not going to see the same type of glory. At least it seemed that way. And this is kind of also a bit of maybe contemporary Medinat Yisrael as well. You know, is it the time of the Geulah? Is it not? I mean, this is not my belief. Of course, it's the time of Geulah. But this tension over the last many years, is this the Ikvita the Mashiach? Is it this time of Geulah? Is it Reshit Simchat Geulatenu? Where are we exactly holding? And it sounds like this ambivalence of the Jews at this time period when Chagai steps onto the stage. There's this ambivalence as well. And there's this equivocation of like, where are we going with this? And this hesitancy comes, we can see, from the way the people speak. This is the Hashem quoting, as it were, Am Yisrael. Ko amar Hashem tzvakot lemor. This is what Hashem God host said. Ha'am hazeh amru. These people have said, I kind of purposely ran through the pasuk. Let's look at it slowly. Lo et bo et bet Hashem libanot. This is not an aleph taf. This isn't indicating this is an object of an action. This is the word time, 2 times. Et bo et bet Hashem libanot. Look at the English. The time has not yet come, but it doesn't say it. Notice, time has not yet come for rebuilding the house of God. But that's not what it says. It says, the time has not come, the time for the house of God to be built. So there's an extra word in here, the word et, the word time. Why? So I came across an interesting idea. This is not my idea. I forgot, honestly, I'm sorry, I forgot. Oh, I do know who it is, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. That's kind of contradictory, I know. That in fact, this is almost the Navi or Hashem, having the Navi tell us that the people are ki'ilu almost stuttering. They're like, it's not the right time. No. It's not the right time. That there's this symbolic stutter to give us this impression that there's this unknown. It doesn't seem it's the right time, does it? It's not the right time to rebuild. And the disparity between
the way you got it off today.
Right, that's my point. That's my point. Exactly. So we see that in our time. That's why we learn Navi, because these kind of things are said even today, whether it's in Tafshin Pei Bet or was in Tafshin Samach or Tafshin Chet. It's is it the right time? Is it not the right time? Which goes back to the whole introduction to Sefer Ezra that we did, a few months back, that the same angst in the Jewish people today, which is unfortunate from a certain segment of our population, both even within Israel, existed back then, the same angst. But there is yesh tikva la'acharitech, because here we do see one thing that does happen with Chagai versus every other prophet that came before him. He accomplished something that Yeshayahu didn't, Yirmiyahu didn't, Yechezkel didn't. He accomplished something. What was that? The people actually listened to him. They obeyed him. They followed what he said. Yes, they followed some of the other nivuot of the other prophets too. But the idea of doing proper tshuva and returning to Hashem and getting rid of the Nachriot wives, which we're going to come to, and most of it came and fell on deaf ears. And Chagai and his 2 little prakim came across as someone who, in an authoritative way, was able to say, "Look, it's Higi Azman. Let's go back for a moment and quote a pasuk from Sefer Melachim." And some of you were with me learning this, where Eliyahu Navi is on Har HaKarmel, and you have this showdown between the Jews and the Nevi'ei HaBaal. And Eliyahu Navi makes the statement. He says, "Ad mataya potecha shtei ha'seipim." How long are you going to stand on? Basically, loose translation. Are you going to straddle 2 sides of the fence? It's not exactly a translation. If it's for the Baal, you go to Baal, and for Hashem, it's for Hashem. You can't have it both ways. And in a sense, this is what Chagai is telling him. It's time to make a choice right now. You're sitting in your beautiful homes, very nice. I'm sure you do a lot of chesed and you do Tomchei Shabbos and you have all these. But take a look at the Beit HaMikdash. Look at your shul. Look at the house of God, and it's a mess. And you have been vacillating. What are we supposed to do? You mean to tell me you stop because the Goyim told you to stop? What's the matter with you? Hashem's telling you right now, time to get moving. And they do, because we're going to see as we will continue. Probably just not till next week, because we get more into chapter in Perek Hey and Perek Vav. We're going to see that they actually do. So Chagai does accomplish something that many others did not. There's another thing to understand, that Malachi, who's we're going to talk about at a different time, is the last of Nevi'im. He comes into a few years into Bayit Sheni, the second Beit HaMikdash. He's the last prophet. And we say that Gemara says that's the Sof HaNevuah, the time period, but the process of what we will call, that is referred to as Rabbinic Judaism, where it's relying less and less on prophets and more on different kinds of leadership is starting to seep in already at this point in the Ezra Nehemiah type time period. And Chagai is actually a part of that, even though he is not at the time of, we're not yet at the time of Malachi. But I want to look at another aspect.
Can I just, I'm a little bit confused. We read in chapter 4 of Ezra that the work was stopped for 18 years due to a letter from
Artaxerxes.
It's
It's a hard name to say. We've jumped ahead. We've jumped ahead many years. Yes.
Right. So what gives us permission now to rebuild the temple?
Very good question. So I'm going to answer you with one sentence, and I'm going to push it off to next week. Because one sentence is that it is Chagai. It is Hashem's nevuah through Chagai, or the nevuah of Chagai from Hashem that gives the permission. How does that jive with the law of the land, which we're going to see and later on in Hay when we repeat and look in Vav. Okay, so it's a great question. Now, there's another aspect that we want to talk about for a few minutes, and that is a paper I came across that is from, let me just get up here on my screen, just a minute. Oh, here it is. Okay, let me get it here.
Can I just say,
please.
Actually, Haggai is doing something very clever. I mean, he's telling the people they have no choice, because he's actually blaming the you say everything is fine, they're living in their beautiful houses, but the conditions are terrible, that they're in the middle of a drought. He's saying this is all because of you, because you haven't built. He's twisted, he's turned everything around. He says, because you haven't built the house, because you haven't built the temple, that's why the drought is. So he's actually given
exactly
not giving much choice, actually.
Excellent. That's exactly his message.
It's something illegal as well. They have no
yeah. That's a very good call. And that's exactly on point. And I want to add one thing. I think it's important to tell you to mention now, because I mentioned the concept of what it says in Shema. I heard a long time. I wish I remember all the names of people I heard these things from, but I picked it up along the way. I'm going to share it with you. It sounds like in the second paragraph of Shema, and also from this a little bit we read from Chagai, that if you do the will of Hashem and do mitzvot, it's going to rain. You don't do little mitzvot, it's not going to rain. Well, there have been plenty of years. I mean, look around. This year has been, Baruch Hashem, an unbelievably wonderful year in Shemitah for rain. Unbelievable. And it continues and it continues. Can you say that Am Yisrael is doing so great that, wow, we deserve all this rain? Not necessarily. So what did I hear was this, what I heard was as follows. You look in the pasuk. Let me just grab a siddur. I'll read it to you. It's actually really strong. It says like this. Okay. Then it says, now listen to the ends of each one of these words, the siyomet, the end of each word. You will gather your grain. And I'll put grass in your fields, for your animals, and you will eat, and you will be full. Okay? Then, what's going to happen as a result? There's not going to be any rain. And the ground will not give its produce. There's no your any longer, right? It doesn't say your ground won't give and your rain won't fall and your grass won't grow. It just says in a very benign way, there will be no rain, there'll be no grass, there'll be no produce. In the first part, when you're doing mitzvot, there's your grain, your wine, your stuff, and you're going to gather, and your grass and your animals. What's it telling us? It's not just that doing the mitzvot you get rain, don't do mitzvot you don't get rain. It's when you make a connection, when Hashem says that you recognize that it's yours, that Hashem gave it to you, and you make this connection, you chaber to Hashem, then the rain comes. It's much more of a meta, M-E-T-A. I don't mean Facebook. There's much more meta discussion here or statement than just you do the mitzvot to get rain, because it's not about just doing mitzvot. And for those of you learning Tanya with me or have learned Tanya, it's not about just stam, or even if you look at Mesilat Yesharim and other places. It's not just doing a mitzvah. It's what you do and how you connect to Hashem. That's what helps. Let's talk about here. So let's just talk for a few minutes about something I came across actually quite a long time ago. And then I found it in two places. And more recently from Rabbi Menachem Liebtag. I'm not giving you anything new here for myself. This is something straight from a shiur he gave quite a while ago, which I think is fascinating. And he makes the following connection. He's talking, this shiur had to do with Hanukkah. We know the Gemara tells us in Masechet Shabbat, this is not him, not me, this is a fact from the Gemara, that in fact, we have a statement the Gemara makes, which says Chanukah Hey, that they rested on the 25th of Kislev, the war was over. Very nice play on words. But the question is there anything special about the 25th of Kislev? Or was it just a random date that just happened to be where things fell into place? So he tells us, this is Rabbi Liebtag's thesis, that Hanukkah had almost a historic nevuah coming before it, hundreds of years before the Hashmonaim even revolted, that it would be specifically on the 25th of Kislev that this was going to happen. If we take a look, you don't have to take a look right now, but I'm going to take a look at it, pop up the screen for a second, the text of Chagai one more time. We're going to take a look at psukim I didn't yet read. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at psukim Yud Chet and An. And if you have the text in front of you, feel free.
Chagai or Ezra?
No, Chagai in Perek Bet. I think it's Perek Bet. Hold on, let me just see. Yeah, here we go. Now this is already, he's telling me I have to build, and this is like his final speech before they start building the next day. What is happening here? Pasuk Yud Chet. Simuna levavchem. Take note. Mina yom hazeh v'mala, from this day on. Miyom 24 latishii, from the 24th day of the 9th month, which is Kislev. From the day on which the foundation is laid for the Beit HaMikdash, be aware, take note. Okay, just right now we're going to leave that pasuk. Okay, he tells, and this is the next day is when they laid the actual foundation. They begin redoing the Beit HaMikdash. Take it off the screen share. Let's go back to what Rabbi Liebtag is telling us. Let's take a look. When I say let's, I'm saying I'm going to take a look at it. He says as follows. Let me get it on my screen. That from the psukim that I read, or that pasuk I read, and a couple of psukim before it, it became clear to him and to Mefarshim that the Binyan Beit HaMikdash was to begin the next day. This was like the clarion call, and we're gonna wake up tomorrow morning, we're gonna daven Hanetz, and we're getting busy. So that the date of Chagai's prophecy is more than just coincidental. There's going to bring us a connection to Hanukkah. Well, okay, nice to say, okay, here's this date and here's that date. But why does he say that there's a date that's a connection, though, between, just because it happened to be that same date? Maybe. But there's something else that happens, or I should say doesn't happen, when Bnei Yisrael rebuild Beit HaMikdash, that is said in the prophecy of Chagai, that doesn't happen. And this is what Rabbi Liebtag uses to point out to us another point. Let me just get it here on the screen. Where is it? I'm going to minimize you for a minute because I have to find it now. I hope I didn't close this window. Oh, okay. Put that here. Now I can come back here. Zoom is wonderful, but I gotta stay ahead of the game here. Okay, let's take a look here. Again, Hashem speaks to Chagai on the 24th of Kislev. He says to speak to Zerubbabel, and I'm going to shake the heavens and earth. What's going to happen? This is like, you also keep in mind, it fits in with what you're asking before, Harry, that remember, they're working on the background. The Jews are working with the background of, they were told, we're not allowed to, you can't do this building. Hashem says, I'm going to overturn the thrones of the kingdoms. Vishmati chozek mamlachot hagoyim, and I'm going to destroy the strength or the might of the kingdom of the nations. V'afachti merkava v'rochveha, I'm going to overturn chariots and their drivers. V'yardu susim v'rochvehem ish becherev v'achiv. But that doesn't happen. The prophecy here, there's two things. One is build the Beit HaMikdash, and also there's this concept of a battle that Hashem is going to vanquish the enemy and lay waste to them. When does it happen? He says it happens on Hanukkah. This is the prelude to Hanukkah. As the Maccabim are having their war, he says that this prophecy of Pasuk Kaf Bet on your screen, Perik Bet of Chagai, is the prophecy that's coming true. So he makes this connection that not only is this the Beit HaMikdash, second Beit HaMikdash has its foundation laid, but also it has the connection to Hanukkah. And also Hanukkah, there's another connection he makes, in another article I saw, between when about the Mishkan and the beginning of the Mishkan and other dates, which again, that's maybe next year on Hanukkah, I'll give that shiur, because it's a wonderful shiur. Again, it's not original. If it's not my Torah, I'm not going to share it with you. I'm not going to share it as if it were my Torah. But so what we have here now in this perek, in this section, has to do with an introduction from a Navi. No, it's in Perek Hey, in Ezra. You have just the one statement that there's Nevuah from Chagai, and we have to fill in the blanks from Sefer Chagai. What I'd like to do, and Mark, I'm sorry, and Harry, if you heard this Friday night, I gave a talk Friday night in shul, outdoor shul, for Parshat Zachor, and I wanted to share this with you tonight as we have the run-up to Purim, which is also about Mechiat Amalek, not to be forgotten. That a question that I raised on Friday night in the shul, and gave a Dvar Torah that is an original thought, and I want to share it with you. The question is not is a very common question. We're told, it says what we read yesterday, Zachor et asher asalecha Amalek. You have to remember what Amalek did, and then the end of those few psukim, it says Timchet zecher Amalek mitachat hashamayim, to destroy, to wipe out the memory of Amalek. Lo tishkach, don't forget. So you have two statements. Zechor, remember. Al tishkach, don't forget. It could have very simply just said Zechor. As a matter of fact, if you look in Parshat Beshalach, when it first occurs, when the Amalek first attacks the Jews in real time, that's all it says. It doesn't say Al tishkach. It doesn't say Lo tishkach. So this question is mentioned by many Mefarshim, and I'll just mention the one. That's the one from Ramban. I talked about more than one Friday night, but just mentioned one from the Ramban. He said, Kvar hiskarti amidrash shedarshu ba besifra. He says, I have already mentioned in another location the midrash that is mentioned in the Sifra. Why does it have to say Zechor and Lo Tishkach? So it says, Yachol belibecha. You might think this is only in your heart. Kishu omer Lo Tishkach, when it says don't forget, hari shichachat alev amura. We already mentioned when it says Al Tishkach or Lo Tishkach, rather, that means inside you shouldn't forget. What is Hamani Mekayim Zachor? What does it mean you should remember? Shetei shoneh beficha. You should mention it. You should repeat it. Now, it's one thing to forget it, wipe Amalek from your mind, but also you have to remember to discuss it, to speak about it. And what I did, I'll do with you now also, with a little experiment to explain how I think, why it says these two statements, why it says Zachor and Lo Tishkach. I'm going to ask you two questions. One is, what is 2 plus 2? Now, it probably took, hopefully, a nanosecond for your brain to say 2. I'm going to ask you a second question. And this one, don't answer, just in your head. Yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon, what did you do? Okay, now that will take you a little, 2:30, I finished eating, I was taking a nap, maybe I was still at the table, I went to Mincha. No, you had to think for a minute. It's in your head. It's in your memory, just like 2 plus 2 is in your memory. And what you did yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon is also in your memory. But it's two different types of memory. There are multiple types of memory. There are multiple ways we store memory, multiple ways we retrieve memory, whether it's through the hippocampus or other areas within our brain, how the storage is retrieved, how it's stored in the first place, short-term memory, long-term. It's its own massive discussion because it's a whole field in science. What I wanted to claim to say is as follows: when it says Zechor et asher asa lecha Amalek, we could use our memory the equivalent of what did I do yesterday at 2:30, which means, okay, yeah, there was Amalek, and once in a while I have to remember and think, okay, what is it they did? Oh yeah, they were the Av Tipus, the archetype of anti-Semite. They destroyed the Jews best for killing Jews. But Hashem is telling us that that's not enough. Hashem is telling us lo tishkach, just like we don't forget. It's on our instant memory, so to speak, of what 2 + 2 is. It's at the tip of our tongue always. We know that simply. So too is the remembrance of Amalek have to be that crystal clear to us. That much in, not that it's back here as some distant memory, but it has to be in the forefront of our cortex, as it were, even though it's not necessarily in the cortex. I don't know. So, well, I'm going to actually stop now. I know it's early. I'm going to stop now because I don't want to start getting into the rest of the chapter. Bezrat Hashem, next week, Sunday night, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we'll continue. What I would like to do is we've already read Perek Hey in the Aramaic. What we're going to do is go back and pick up a few points, a few questions we'll discuss, and we're going to get into Perek, hopefully, into Perek Vav already, which is also all in Aram, almost all in Aramaic. We'll bring up a few points. And then just as a bit of a background, we're also going to finally meet Ezra, who steps into the Sefer for the first time. And we'll have to discuss why he doesn't show up until then. So in the meantime, I want to also close with just one halacha. Many years ago, I was still living in Chicago. Someone called me up. And I'm mentioning this because it is something that I have found many, and myself included, many people are educated a wrong piece of information. And I like to try to get the information out when I can. Someone called me up once and said, how come, is it true that we have to give, when we give Mishloach Manot, you have to give 2 things, with each one has a different bracha, like a mezonot and a shakol. He said, where do you know it from? I said, it's in the Shulchan Aruch. What do you mean? I said, okay, can you do me a favor? Could you find it and just send me the reference because I would like it? I said, sure, no problem, Mr. Know-it-all here. No problem. I open the Shulchan Aruch, I'm turning pages, I'm looking at nowhere. So what? So I did a little more investigation, and everything says 2 manot, nothing about 2 brachot, two things. You can say like an apple and a banana, an apple and a tangerine, but it doesn't say anything about 2 different brachot. So I have a kind of call him, I guess, a friend, a colleague, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, Shlita. He's the son of Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. He's obviously the descendant of the Soloveitchik family. And he's just as a parenthetical statement, I once asked him a question. He's a Rav of a shul also, a really small little shul. And I asked him, is it true that you think about what you're going to say, your Dvar Torah on Shabbat, as you're walking up to the podium or to the shtender? He says, nah, I don't think about it until I actually get up there. That's his brain. It's like, it's the Soloveitchik brain. It's unbelievable. So anyways, I called him up. I said, Rav Moshe, I'm stumped. Either I've learned something wrong my whole life, or someone's pulling the wool over my eyes. I don't know what's going on. So he starts laughing. He says, yeah, because I said, it's a question about Purim. He says, yeah, everyone gets it wrong. I said, what's the basis? Everyone taught 2 different brachot, 2 different manot, 2 things. But that's me. He says he has no idea where it came from. Everyone gets it wrong. It's not true. It's not what it says in Shulchan Aruch. So the bottom line is that you should know you have to give a minimum of 2 different items. Each can be the same bracha. Have to be to at least one person. Matanot le'evyonim, to 2 evyonim, and I will repeat a call that if you are looking to give matanot le'evyonim, you can use me as a shaliach. You can give it to me before or the morning of Purim, and I have an outlet for it. But that's the basic mitzvah. So don't let anyone pull the wool over your eyes ever again. If they tell you it's 2 brachot, it's not.
Was there anything about one of them and not being cooked? They shouldn't be.
Yeah, you can't. Okay, right. So they have to be edible. No, it can't be raw. A piece of raw meat and some raw pasta, because they have to be edible as is, without any kind of preparation. Otherwise, you've kind of missed the purpose. They have to be something edible. That's correct.
But neither has to be hot.
Nope,
Right.
definitely not. Nope, they do not.
Because I remember once visiting a Rabbanit, Almanah, of a Rav who was a Kohen, who was well known in the center of Yerushalayim, and her mishloach manot was always a hot meatball and it was like a meal. It was like a complete
Beautiful.
meal. It was amazing.
Beautiful.
It
Yep.
really was.
Very nice.